Chapter 3 Rain Harvest. Marlowe left the door slamming to the Sherpa's hut as he returned to the smothering heat and shielded his eyes from the brightness coming off the sand covering everything in a blinding, textureless veneer. Doused men sitting in the shade watched him swear and wipe his forehead, shaking their heads, deriding the newcomer. He noticed their gabbering and made for the nearest pool under a building with a few guys sitting, smoking cigars, chewing jerky. They eyed him with distrust as he walked up, trying to sop up the sweat on his cheeks with his shirt. "How goes, gentlemen?" he asked, acting like he wasn't melting. They didn't say. He took off a boot and dumped out the sand. Did the same with the other. Sweet relief. "Either of you know where to find, who's it? Hulga? I'm supposed to help her harvest rain. Hef, Sherpa, sent me." The smaller one rolled his head at a hut behind them about 100 feet away. Marlowe pointed at the porched home, raised an eyebrow. The man nodded, turning to the other, exchanging wordless opinion as they shared the cigar. Thanks. I'll take a look." He slipped around the right side of the hut and came up to the rock garden out front of the home. A huge, doused woman with a rope of knotted dreads coming out of her shaved head came out from behind the hut dragging a 200-gallon tank by its calcified chain. She walked around the side of the boulders and left the tank upright so it settled in the sand. She clapped off some white dust, put her fists on her hips, and started off to grab the other barrel. "Excuse me," Marlowe called. "Hulga!" She turned, looking back at him like he'd called her by some slur. An unbridled fire started in her pupils. Her legs tensed as she turned her attention to him. "Yeah. What is it?" "You come to bother me during my work?" She came closer, voice growing louder. Tall and broad and towering over Marlowe, she came close enough that her face became clear. Blocky features, a strong chin, blue eyes shimmered in the daylight. A white tank top conformed to her chest, revealing pocketed muscles like a butcher's chopping block. Blue trunks clung on her hips. Her outfit looked like it was from the council. From Oscar's tent. "Hi, I am here to see..." "Oh, you. I saw you earlier coming in from the sky. You are the new council messenger, yes?" Her voice barbaric, yet elegant. "Ambassador, I'm Tightness's replacement. Hef said you might have work I could help with on my first day." "That is a tragedy, the man's passing." She looked back at the tank and switched the subject. "Hef spoke of me. Well, if you do not mind fetching rain, I am gathering today's supply. Though I cannot imagine for someone who slays storms for a living that is exciting work." She offered a hand. "Helga." Marlowe took it. Hot, burning. "Marlowe." The sizzle of their fires talked to each other. "You aren't doused?" She retracted, holding her hand away from herself. A warm glow came off it. "Need a way to get the rains out of their perch, you know. Hef allows it so long as I use it to help the village." "It doesn't sound any less interesting than what we do." Marlowe rubbed his hands together. "I'd like to help. What can I do?" "Already demanding work on your first day." Her voice became hearty laughter. She slapped him on the back. "I like that, Marlowe. Come, let me show you how I help here. You may learn something too." She led him to the tank and knocked on it, echoing some dull metallic sound through its empty insides. "We need a way to get it back. The water. So we use these. A little heavy." "A little?" Marlowe smirked. "I am serious. Carrying is not easy. But this will make someone like you strong. Trust me. We may have the flame, but we need water to survive just like anyone else. And also to put out the fires the pyros start." "I've gathered that's a problem?" "Problem? For 4 blasted years. Does the ground kill every plant we bury?" He didn't say. "It does. We have tried. Endlessly. We have constant needs for water despite farming running into the ground. And since clouds do not come above us, it is up to me, now you, to gather enough runoff to take care of the people's water needs for at least a day. Sounds rather important. Beyond your belief. She pointed at the aluminum tank. You get this one, Marlowe. I will take the other one in the back. I understand counselors are good at hunting storms. Good at burning them. I trust you have control when the time calls for it. Whenever that is, I haven't seen it. Drench doesn't like restraint, and neither do we. Tends to get us, killed. He swallowed. You know, because of the clear skies here, where do you go usually? North. Along the mountains. Lots of activity that way. Though nothing exhausting for half a day's walk. She went behind her hut and drug out the other tank, pushing the sand out of the way as she drug it along. Then I'll try to keep up. He grabbed the chain and tugged with it, filling his boots with more sand. His jacket slipped down his arm. She laughed and called to him. Might want to think about a different wardrobe while you are here. A jacket will not do you much good. Neither will those boots. Especially because the people here care less for style than you city livers. Leave whatever you want in my hut. You can grab it when we get back. She sprinted off, bouncing the empty tank behind her as Marlowe dropped off his coat, wondering how he was going to keep up with the woman. His feet started to feel raw at the thought, like they'd be hamburgered before they found a cloud. He breathed sharply and took the chain and started after her across the sand. When he caught up to the water fetcher, out of breath, seeing stars, and shaking from the cuts on his palms the chain had given him, he bent over, ready to collapse beside her. How much longer? He panted. Should a counselor not know? She asked. I walk until the sky sticks out, wisp or some hint of moisture. Since we are up out of the desert, it should not take too much time until we find a cloud worthy of the walk. Marlowe struggled with his barrel. I thought you said you do this all the time. That's all you do? Wait for one to show up? Is that not the same as what you all do? She looked back from the sky at him. Well, we see them as more of a threat, so we hunt them down as opposed to, this leisurely surveillance. You must think you know how we work. Is that it? I at least know some from your council who work in similar ways. Others too. Really? Who do you know? Titanus, Wilhelm, Viceroy Rosalind, Oscar. You now, I suppose. A dozen or more, maybe, mostly counselors who wait around for storms. I go to your city for trading, spend a good time in the tap as well. A sly smile perked up the corners of her mouth. Sky tap, huh, that right. Drinking with the best of us. Then you're more familiar with where I'm from than I am of anything about you. That why you don't call me Polly like the others? She shrugged. I feel it is impolite to judge someone by their group, sometimes even with the pyros, if I am feeling kind. What do you think they think of us? Little for anyone, or even this earth, it seems. Come on, up this way, I have something to show you. They walked up a rolling hill from the dry plains to its top, then down into a lush pasture running over with streams. Bugs chirped. The sweet smells of greenery burned Marlowe's nose. An oasis, right on the other side of the desert, she said. How they do not know the riches beyond their borders. She smiled at him, her rough features turning soft for a moment before disappearing like a mirage. See the current in the water? How it whips cotton into the sky? She pointed. This is a good place to find rain. He followed her finger up to the bold blue, lending imagination enough to believe a cloud would soon form in the atmosphere. He'd seen it happen plenty of times. She thought he was a fool, he thought. He wasn't. We should rest, gather breath, that sort of thing. You look able to benefit from that. Then, when it is ripe, we pluck our fruit. I am sure you know the best color for density, largest splash for our pick. He dragged the tank behind him like a ball and chain. She let go of hers and sat down in a patch of grass, dipping her calloused feet into the stream. He did the same, peeled off his boots, poured out the sand, and cleaned the grit between his toes in the cool water. They sat, admiring the boundless hills around them, only a couple hours away from the desert. Felt colder, shadier, windier. Storms often slid off the mountains to the east, roamed over the land, tumbled and merged into supercells, and let go in one vengeful splash, obliterating the land in a flood so mighty that the historical books had to change records on a weekly basis. If they'd still been around, that is. Though this time the cloud would be a simple chore, incapable of doing much to a person besides maybe giving them a harsh drink that'd soak their nose. There'd fall enough water for the village. That was it. No need to get fancy, he told himself. Maybe the Sherpa would give him something more demanding after this, after proving himself. Helga squinted hard at something. He followed her gaze to the northern skies, which were often free of the perpetual weather to the west. Except now, the gray weather dominated both cardinal directions, and the perpetual storms looked closer than ever before. Sunlight halted at the looming curtain, casting down harsh shadows beneath crashing seas. Billows swirled in like windmills, waiting for something, it seemed, posing a threat for onlookers to spread back to their homes with words that empowered the storm clouds and the inevitable destruction that accompanied them. Fear killed just as much as nature did. She glanced at the counselor. Her eyes trembled, ocean blue stirring with trouble. She nibbled her chapped lips. The Everstorms have grown since yesterday. But they're not actively moving. See? Not yet, she said, turning back and rubbing her hairy legs with some disquieted consideration. Her eyes lingered on the ground. We will overcome them. You know that. Like we always have. She shrugged. That's what counselors do. Marlowe gestured to his body, of regular size, of ample fitness, he told himself. It's what I've sworn my life to do. He put down his head. She glanced at him as he paused. I want to show the city I can become as great as him. As Titanus. He breathed without confidence. No matter the differences between us in training, life, size, anything. I will save this world as he always did. So you came to the desert as his replacement, in the same spot as him, she said. It's the closest thing to being like him I could think of. To start, anyway. I want to help as he did. How noble to follow in his footsteps. Helga turned back to the rumbling skies. Vapor started to form above their heads. He was, always will be, a great leader and protector of our people, and yours. What you speak of, how we will stop the floods. He could have done that. He was doing that. You should be proud to have him as your model. I am. If I walk where he did, then the gods who praised him will notice me too. Blessed by gods. That is why he became great? It has to be. Marlowe clenched his fist. He was chosen. They sat there unstirring in the silence for a good bit until the wind started to whoosh overhead. Helga looked up at it. Heads up! We have our fruit, she said with a giddy smile. A cloud grew directly above them, condensing into a cotton ball. Its cool shade fell softly on their skin as it thickened into foam and blotted out the sun. It was the size of his fist that he held up to it. She unscrewed the caps on the tanks. Titanus, on his first day too, learned to grab the fruit. I was stunned by his finesse for a man of his size. If you can resemble him, we will be in good shape, and your desires will be on their way. Marlowe nodded. looked at the tanks that had holes smaller than the palm of his hand. He looked confused. How do we get the water inside? How about you break the cloud and I siphon? I don't understand. How will you... Do you need to understand right now? He looked up at the cloud. I guess not. Then what are you waiting for? Trust is key, Marlowe. I know what I am doing. I trust you do as well. He lowered his eyes, shook out his shoulders, and conjured up an image of heat in his head. Helga's gaze bored into the back of his skull, nearly starting his hair on fire if he could not light it for himself. He wound up his arm, ready to pitch a fastball. His muscles grew hot. Afraid to fire in front of me? I promise I will not make light of you if you cannot do it. He scoffed, trying to focus on the cloud. I can do it. It was a baby. The water would be easy. He leaned on his back foot, turned up to the sky, lowered his throwing hand, sparked a ball of fire in the palm, and lobbed it up as hard as he could. An orange flash sailed up in a straight line from his fingertips, tearing against the air. It whistled and sparked, seeming like it would go on forever. But as it got closer to the cotton island, the whistling died down, and the sparks started to sputter. It's not going to make it, he told himself. His chest started to sink. She would see that he was weak, laugh at him for wishing to become the next Titaness. He wasn't going to make it. He wasn't going to. But the fire landed. Red fissures tore open the white ball like an exhausted eye, ripping it into diamond debris sparkling in the late morning as a descent of swirling rain down to the lush valley. It'd be wasted unless Helga moved to catch it. She swirled a force of her own into the air above both open caps. 2 orange whirlwinds. They caught the fire sloshing down and siphoned it into the tanks, forking like an upside-down Y into both holes. The cloud dried up, and the overhead sky went blue again. The tanks gurgled with the glorious rushing sound of life-saving hydration. His brain flooded with the positivity this would bring to the dry town. How heroic it felt. The last trickles of rain emptied into the vats, leaving a fine mist on both harvesters. Marlowe sighed a breath of relief, steaming. Never seen the flame used that way. Then you are a long way from home, Counselor Marlowe. She screwed the caps back on. That is all we need. Let us return. She hooked up her shoulder with the chain of one tank and started back down the hill. He agreed with her. Felt like a long way from home. Out here with this rain gatherer, getting hungry, thirsty, like the world behind felt farther away than it ever had during any of his times hunting the drench. He could see himself enjoying the peace here with the doused, like Titaness had once done. He struggled to keep the tank from steamrolling him down the slope on their return. The two of them mustered the incredible weight of the 200-gallon tanks of fresh water back to the village. Helga stuck out a hand to him as they came up alongside her hut. He was afraid to take it at first, his body vibrating, even though they'd worked together. You helped a great deal, she said. He shook her hand. Tight grip from her made him squeak. She planted her knuckles on her hips and looked at the tanks with pride. Do this every day? Marlowe asked, ghost white, out of breath. He'd almost lost his tank a few times on the way back. Every couple. We sustain it well. Usually. It's back-breaking work. You normally take both tanks by yourself? She nodded, thinking little of it. Though you made today much easier. Go. Tell the Sherpa of your success. I will speak with him of it later. Perhaps he has more work for you. Something a bit easier, he told himself before nodding. He pointed at her hut. I'll just grab my coat. Oh! She yelped, running ahead over to it as if she forgot something. She came out with a pair of sandals and his jacket. These will make life less difficult while you are here. Trust me. Easier to clean, much easier on the feet. She handed the jacket over next. Do not indulge fashion like this while you are here with us. It will make life hell. He took them from her, folding the jacket over his shoulder and hanging the flimsy shoes on his fingers. Thank you, Helga. I should have dressed differently, but for next time. She gave him a reassuring smile. That same softness accompanied it. You will do well here, in everything you set out to do. I am convinced of that after today. He nodded, lingering on her kind words. I should go. I am happy you could help me. Chances are we will have to do it again. I hope you are not opposed to that. I'll be around. Depends on what the Sherpa wants next, but count me in. She belched a good bout of laughter and clapped him on the back. Excellent! That is what I love to hear. Work as much as you can. It is what the great counselor himself would have done. Until then, be seeing you, yes? Farewell with the rest of everyone around here. Mother knows you will need it. But I have a feeling you will win them over. She turned and steamrolled her tank away to a shed. He grew lightheaded just watching her, body beating with tugs of blood under his skin, either from the heat or the work, or both. As the doused woman muscled the tank through the sand for the thirsty people, he caught himself smiling. He turned down his head and made for the Sherpa's hut.